Welcome back to your Networth's Network. I'm your host, Corey McNabb, and this is a networking style podcast where we bring on special guests. We learn a little bit about them, about their business, and see how we can all work together and help each other out. My goal in life is to rise to a place of excellence, and I want to bring you with me. So, that being said, let's introduce our special guest, Mr. Logan Nelson. What's up, Logan?
What's up, man? I appreciate the intro. I like that a lot.
No, thank you. So, Logan, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, college dropout, 21 years old. I live out here in Arkansas, and I do wholesale real estate.
Okay. So you run the whole thing?
Yeah, so right now I'm on the same team as you. We're working with a few people in Pace Morby's sub 2 group. We have a team of, I think I checked the Discord, it's got 70 people in there. Yeah, it's crazy. I didn't realize that. I thought we were 40 or 50. But yeah, we've got a group of about 7 people. One of the closers for the wholesaling business, and Corey is one of the team leads. And so what we do is we just generate a whole bunch of leads and off-market distressed properties or even on-market distressed properties through realtors, and we make offers on them. And I'm just one of the people that help, explain creative financing or, what our cash options might look like.
Gotcha. Okay. I definitely want to get into that, but I'm actually more interested in what you had going on this weekend. So tell me about that.
Yeah. So this past weekend, I ran a race out in Oregon, and it was called the Gorge Waterfalls 30K. And this was the first race I've ever ran in my life. I haven't competed in running in high school. I did tennis and martial arts growing up. I never did any sort of track or cross country. I was athletic, but I never really ran before. I'm sure before I started training for this, I probably had ran 3 miles at the absolute most, and I thought that was a lot. But I started training for this back in August, and one of my buddies wanted to do it with me. And so I was like, okay, sure, why not? He lives up in the Northwest, so I got to stay with him. That was cool. And what the race is it's a 30-kilometer race on trail. And the trail is literally on the side of a mountain, and you're crossing through some of the waterfalls in the region called the Gorge, right on the border of Oregon and Washington. So this past weekend, after I don't even know how many months, it must have been 6-8 months of training, I made it there to the race, and I finished it up and impressed myself that I was able to get it done.
Jeez. Okay, so it was a full-on trail run then.
Mm-hmm. It was mostly trail. There was some road sections in there, which was disappointing. But for the most part, think single track hiking trail, national park type stuff that we were going through. Because I'm pretty sure the area over there is a state park. But loose rocks, we had to cross. We had this one waterfall that we were running up on. And you're going there's really no flat place either. It's always up or down. It's up or down. And you're coming down some of these trails, and it's switchback turns that are tight, 180-degree turns. So you're coming down, and then you'll turn literally probably that distance, and you'll be going down the other way. And, if you end up falling off, it's, basically a cliff. So footing was very important. But yeah, so we had to cross a river at one point. We came down some of these switchbacks, saw another waterfall, and the trail just went straight through the river. And it was just kind of there was some little blocks where you could try to stay dry, but I didn't want to face plant and break my face on some rocks. So I decided to go with the wet feet option instead. But yeah, mostly trail. There was a couple road sections just where the trail had to drop off. And I'm sure they probably just couldn't clear it in time, but yeah.
Man. So did you come out unscathed, or you got any battle scars?
No, I was lucky enough. I didn't have anything crazy happen to me. It was just I was sore at the end of the race. I ended up setting up for the half marathon. 30 kilometers is about 18 miles. So, you're running over a half marathon in there. And the previous PR that I set for my half marathon was running on road with no elevation. So in this 18-mile race that was on trail over like jagged rocks and on the side of a cliff, I ended up setting and breaking my PR.
There you go.
Yeah, so that was exciting. But yeah, no injuries. I was really just sore at the end of it. The buddy that I was running with, though, he was coming down some of these switchbacks, and out of the corner of his eye, he sees like this object that's just like barreling towards him. And he ends up like seeing that it's like this rock, and it like just barely like grazes right across his shin. And so, you know, I get to the finish line, I'm crying, I'm all this other stuff. And, you know, like we end up talking about the race. He shows me he probably has a goose egg on his shin, maybe not that big, maybe like that big of just, you know, round. And it's like this grapefruit cantaloupe size rock that coming down on the trail, barely grazed his shin and did that. If it would have hit him direct on, like he probably would have broken his tibia or something.
Oh man.
Yeah. Or it's like, imagine if that like hit you in the head, you know, like that wouldn't have been good. But there's lots of people that rolled their ankles. I was fortunate enough. I didn't roll an ankle. I didn't, you know, have a rock slide happen. We were running under like some like pretty sketchy trees, or like hopping over these other trees that had just fallen down that were across the trail. So nothing happened there, but I just got dirty and wet and sweaty and sore. That was it.
Man. Well, I'm glad nothing happened. You know,
Mhm.
that's good to hear. That's awesome. You kind of make me want to do one now, but I'm not a runner, so we'll see.
I wasn't a runner going into this either. Like, never identified as one. My buddy Brian that I was running it was a runner, but he's never competed in a race before. This was his first competitive race. He just enjoyed running. And I was like, okay, like probably the reason, you know, why I don't like running is because it's hard and it's painful. And that's probably the exact reason why I should do it, because entrepreneurship is hard and painful. So that was kind of the intention behind the run, is to kind of work on my grit and discipline through training for it.
There you go. That's awesome. So let's go back to your business then.
Mm-hmm.
You're working with our team and you're closing deals. How did you get to where you are now? Like, how did that whole process start?
Do you want the long story? Or you want the short story?
This is your show, buddy. Whatever story you want to give us.
Okay. I'll give the Spark Notes version of the long story. That way we can get into some deeper stuff. But my journey with entrepreneurship as a whole started whenever I was like 12 or 13. And basically, I was doing martial arts at the time. You know, my mom was picking me up from karate, and she was like, hey, you know, I saw this really cool thing on Facebook where, you know, these people are going to like garage sales or thrift stores, and they're buying stuff and then they're reselling it on eBay for a profit. So basically like American Pickers, but just on like a smaller scale. And so I'm like, okay, that's cool. Like, we already go to, you know, garage sales and thrift stores anyways. My mom's always been like a spendy or like a thrifty type person. And so I was like, okay, like this sounds kind of weird. I don't think we're going to find something worth like $1,000 at a thrift store, but you know, whatever. We're already going to be at these stores anyways. I'll tag along. And so we ended up doing that. And I remember like vividly selling my first game. It was a little Mario DS game that I had found at a garage sale for like $4, and I sold it for like $18. By the time that we paid like shipping and everything, I made like $6 probably, but it was proof of concept. I remember like looking at my phone and like see the notification. I'm like, no way, this actually works. So I guess you could say I kind of caught the bug after that. You know, I was always kind of like the dude at school that had stuff for sale. But I wasn't super consistent with it. It was just kind of just something me and my mom did for fun. And it just, you know, we sold things every once in a while, and it was cool just, you know, having the extra money come through. Eventually, my dad ended up getting really sick, and he ended up passing away from cancer whenever I was 16. So that kind of made this whole, you know, eBay side hustle gig turned from, like a hobby into like an actual job, because we needed to help, sustain the income for the household. That way we wouldn't like lose the house or anything. So we did that, and that really pushed me and taught me a lot. Helped me grow up faster than I probably should have, but I honestly feel like it was the best experience I ever could have gone through, is going through it at that age and having that responsibility laid on me. Because I mean, 16 is basically like the minimum age you have, where if like you need to make something big happen, you actually have somewhat of a decent shot of doing it, compared to like whenever you're like 12 or 13. So taught me a lot, really got me like more invested into entrepreneurship. Fast forward, a few years, I'm graduating high school and I'm going to college, and I'm still doing this whole eBay thing. I tried drop shipping on eBay for a little bit, ended up getting my account banned. So I just kind of stuck with the whole, buying stuff from garage sales and reselling it model. It was fun. Like we would find stuff literally for like $14 and sell it for like 700 sometimes, or like 300 or stuff like that. Like there was good items, and I was getting good at, like discerning like, oh, like, we can buy that for, $25 and we'll probably sell it for 100. And so it was cool. Like at some point, I think like the average of an item on my store was $150 or something like that. It just like, it wasn't worth wasting my time on the smaller things, because it's going to take you the same amount of time to package it anyway. I continue on doing it in college. My strategy for college was, obviously I can't keep all my inventory in a dorm, so I'm going to get a storage unit and put all my inventory in there. So I got a storage unit about 15 minutes away from the college. It's a nice air-conditioned inside unit. I made like a little side deal with the operator there, saying like, hey, like I'm going to be in here working, but anytime you walk by, you just like close your eyes and you don't see me, working, because you're not supposed to be working on these things. But anyways, I did that for a little bit, and it just so happened that Christmas break, my freshman year in college, I was like looking into like other ways of making money. And I had heard of wholesaling before. I was like, oh, like you can just sell a contract, you don't have to buy the house, and you can make like tons of money doing it. So for whatever reason, I was like scrolling on this app called Meetup, where there's a whole bunch of different, meetups that are going on in the area. And I lived in DFW at the time, so there's, a lot of stuff going on because there's so many freaking people there. And I found this real estate investing one. And it was literally the last day of my Christmas break before I had to go back to college. And this was a free event. It was nuts. It was 3 days, 8 hours a day of nothing but real estate. And of course, they try and sell you their course while you're there, but it was still like, I was like, shoot, what do I have to lose? 3 days, 24 hours a piece, or 8 hours a piece. And then that Monday morning, I have my car pre-packed. I just get up, I drive 2.5 hours back to Longview, and I'm going to college. So me and my buddy Devin, he had started doing the same like eBay wholesaling or eBay reselling thing with me while I was in college. I told him about it. I'm like, hey, you're going to have to fly through DFW. You want to show up 3 days early and go with me? He's like, yeah, sure. Let's do it. So we go to this, holy cow, my screen's getting bright. We go to this event seminar thing, and it's literally 8 hours of everything real estate. It's wholesaling, fix and flipping, sub two, seller finance, novations. They started it off with like a house swap. And it was like somebody swapping their house in the city for like a house out in the country. And they somehow had like 2 properties under contract at the same time. And they literally just like changed the deeds and made 50 grand in between. It was weird. Yeah, some crazy stuff I've never seen anybody else pull off. But regardless, they went over like all sorts of different like creative strategies for real estate, showed us that, you don't really need the money to get started. You can find the money anywhere. You just need to find the deal first. And so, we're all amped up. We're like, oh my gosh, we're going to go back to Longview. This is on the shittiest side of town. There's going to be tons of distressed properties. We're going to go around and, just make it work. So we drive out to Longview that Monday. We go to class. I look back on this Meetup app and come to find out there's also a real estate meetup in Longview on Monday. So we go to that real estate meetup. We end up like finding this like mentor dude that like talks about like a strategy on how he finds distressed houses. Really weird strategy that we started off with. It was Literally, we would go to Walmart. We would buy like big neon green poster board. We would cut it in half and we would write on it cash for houses and then our phone number and then any condition, any situation. And then we would get some duct tape and we would go out to these distressed abandoned properties and we would go up to the house and literally duct tape this sign on a house that we didn't own. And basically, we're not saying that it's for sale, but we are like just advertising, I guess. I don't know. So
like a mix of bandit signs and door knocking.
yeah, exactly. And so eventually you get people to sign. And we eventually got smart enough too, because like we got calls from the owners that were like pissed off sometimes that we wrote like notes on the back of the sign saying like, hey, like if you're interested in selling your house, like let us know. But regardless, the whole like strategy was it doesn't say that it's for sale, but people are going to think it's for sale and they're going to call you. And those are going to be like sweat equity type buyers, you know, so like Hispanics with some mattress money that, you know, want to throw some money into the house and kind of fix it up. So you basically get the buyer first. You say, hey, like, let me see what we can work out. And then you try and find the seller and like convince them to sell the house after you have the buyer. That was basically the strategy, right? So we're going around, we're doing that. We're skip tracing people, we're cold calling them too, and all this other junk. Eventually, after, probably 4 months of doing this, I end up landing my first deal. It ended up being through a referral, convoluted story, but I somehow got, you know, this referral to this, you know, distressed property that this lady needed to sell. She was just ready to let it go. She was moving in with her sister because she was getting elderly and she had this house that's been abandoned. Her son used to live there. Her son had like mental health issues, like kind of screwed up the place, whatever. So I go there, I look around the property and I'm like, I can offer you $15,000. And Longview's a cheap market. That's pretty typical for a really distressed property in that area. And so she's like, okay, sweet. I pull out my little freaking 1-page contract. I probably still have it, actually. I could go like find it in one of the folders. But it is like the most rinky-dink freaking contract you could ever imagine. Like this dude that I learned from, weirdest strategy ever. Super simple, like not at all like legally enforceable contracts. And with this weird strategy that, you know, was supposed to work. That was, I don't know. I didn't know any better. I was just like, okay, I guess this is how you do it, right? And eventually, you know, we signed the contract, whatever. I didn't put a sign on this house. So, you know, I go back to my dorm. I cut, you know, one of these poster boards in half. I write cash for houses and my phone number on it because I'm like, okay, like now I got to find a buyer for this contract, right? So I pull up to the house. I duct tape it on the house again. And then I you know, end up leaving. And so I'm calling up one of my investor buddies that I had met at this meetup. I'm like, hey, like, do you want to take a look at this house? I have this deal, you know, whatever. And so we go through, he's walking through the house. He's talking me through like what he's looking at. Like, you know, there's holes in the wall, like a tree fell on the house. You could tell it like had like structural issues. The kitchen was in complete disarray. And so he's like, the cabinets are going to be expensive, blah, 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 you know, like giving me all like the perspective that I need. And so we're walking on the outside of the house, backyard's overgrown, all this other stuff. And we're coming down the side and we're starting to walk down the driveway. And I remember as I pulled up to the house the second time, whenever I was putting the sign on the house, is I was driving the neighborhood and I was like, this is a pretty, you know, like average sweat equity, like Hispanic type neighborhood. And I looked across at the house across the street. It just, you could kind of tell it was, you know, a do-it-yourself Hispanic family that lived there. And I could tell like they had a big driveway, you know, like they usually had a whole bunch of cars in front of the house that I saw the first time I was there. But the second time there was nobody there. And I was thinking like, oh, I should just go across the street and I should door knock them because, I mean, they might want to buy the house right across the street. Looks like a sweat equity buyer. So anyways, I pulled up the second time with this investor buddy, or the third time with this investor buddy of mine. He's walking through the house. I look across the street. There's still nobody there. So I'm like, okay, I'm not going to knock on the door, right? As we're coming down the driveway, me and this investor, he's like, I can offer you 25 grand. And so I'm like, cha-ching, let's go. There's 10 grand right there. Then as he tells me that, my phone starts ringing in my pocket. Pull up my phone, And I say like, hey, like this is Logan. And she's like, hey, like I see your house across the street. Like, is it for sale? And I look literally directly across the street. Somebody had just put an ear, like their phone up to their ear. And so I'm like, hey, like I'm outside right now. You want to come take a look at it? And, we show them the property. She's like, oh, like, yeah, we didn't know what was going on with this property. It's been vacant for like 10 years, but my dad actually might be interested in purchasing the property. So I'm like, okay, like let's talk to the decision maker. Let's get to your dad. And so I end up talking with her dad, and he pulls the whole like I don't speak English that well card, and I could tell this dude like spoke English pretty well because I saw him, whatever. But it's cool. I'm like, I get it. I would probably do the same thing too. And I go through, and he's like, just like give me a price, and I'm trying to pull the price at him because I don't want to give my price first. But he's like, give me a price. So I'm like, okay, I'll just do something crazy. I'll say 50,000. He's like, 50,000? Can you do 45? And I'm like, sure, I'll do 45. And so now I've literally changed my assignment fee from $10,000 up to $30,000. We get an assignment contract signed, or we didn't even do an assignment contract. We did a double close on this because that was another thing this dude just like taught me that you're supposed to do is a double close. But there was no point of that. So I ended up changing my $30,000 assignment fee to like a $28,000 assignment fee, but whatever. And we go through and we end up doing the paperwork. Like title was clear, nothing was weird in escrow, super easy lady to work with, like dream deal, come to think of it. And like in the beginning, I was just like, oh, like I'm sure this is how like everything's supposed to work. But everything lines up, stars align, funds hit the account. I get wired $28,000 as a freaking 18-year-old in college. And I'm like, what the heck? Like, I've never seen this much money in my life. I have a positive net worth. Like, what's going on? And yeah, so that basically made me catch the wholesaling bug. I was like, this is awesome. I just made 3 times my tuition in, one transaction. Why am I trying to be an engineer in college? Because I was trying to backdoor my way into real estate anyways. I wanted to do development. I was doing civil engineering for that reason. And I was like thinking about it. I'm like, I didn't even know why this house didn't fall over. I don't need to know anything about like any sort of structural details of the house. All I need to know is like, how much is it worth and how much can I sell it for? That's it. So I was like, okay, I'm pulling the plug. I'm out. Dropped out of college, moved back in with my mom. At that time, my girlfriend had also dropped out of college. A year later, we were just ready to move out of the house. So we ended up moving up to Arkansas, and I was wholesaling ever since. I've been in the game for about 2 years now, and, here we are.
Wow. That's awesome.
So long story, I know.
No, I mean, that was great. That was great. That was really cool. So I think one of the biggest things, because I know I struggled with this, and a part of me still struggles with it, is, and maybe you did experience this and you just didn't mention it, but like I know I struggle with just overthinking. Right? Okay, well, what am I gonna say? Right? How am I? Oh, okay. This looks like a good deal, but how am I gonna convince them to do this? How am I gonna blah blah, and just overthink the shit out of it, right?
Yeah.
To me, it sounds like you just kind of like, I don't even know what I'm doing. Here you go.
Yeah, the overthinking was something I actually like feel like I developed. Like, if I could go back, like looking at this, I didn't overthink this at all. Like I was going to Walmart and buying neon green signs and duct taping them on random people's houses, like borderline vandalism. And I was just like, I'm cool with it. Whatever. I don't care. Like what's the worst thing that can happen? But then like, as you get like deeper into the weeds and you start seeing like all the stuff that can go wrong. And then like you're shown like title issues and marketing and sales and people are just gross sometimes and all this other stuff. That's whenever I started getting the overthinking virus, I guess. And that's still something I'm working through today. And there's times where I just wish like, man, ignorance is really bliss. I wish I could just like go back and be just as ignorant and equally as driven and just go out and make stuff happen. But now, I'm thinking, what dialer should I use? What are the regulations on my dialer? What is going to be my first 3 words whenever I talk to the seller on the phone,
Yeah. Yeah, no, I get it. I get it. That's amazing. Okay. Um so I guess what you've been doing this for 2 years now. Um
Hmm.
is it fair to say that that experience of jumping in and just getting started is still kind of fresh in your mind?
What do you mean by that?
Like, it's only been 2 years now, but is it 2 years that like so much has happened that you're like, I don't even remember the feelings from then, or are those
Hmm.
still there and you're using that to propel you forward?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I would say you go through a big evolution, especially I realize that I, I'll preface it with this. There's a quote that I've heard from Alex Hormozy where he's like, everybody has like two beginnings in entrepreneurship. Like the first one is just like whenever it's like a side hustle. And the second one's whenever it becomes a business or something like that, like hobby business, some sort of like point where you start taking it like seriously. And I think for me, even whenever I was starting wholesaling, it was still a hobby type pursuit. I really feel like whenever I got serious about it was as I dropped out of college. And I don't even think even then I was all the way serious about it. And I feel like each one of those levels, like the hobby level and like the professional level, it takes two different kinds of drive. And I feel like I've fully gone into like the professional level now. So I feel like the drive I had at the beginning to make like the hobby level work was, I want to make money and I just, I enjoy doing this stuff and it's fun and it's not like getting a job. I'm working for myself. I make more money than I would at a job. Now, like the things that are going to drive me and keep me consistent moving forward are more long-term visions and like true deep core like purposes and like what character I want to be whenever I'm like 50 years old. What's the type of person I want to be? What type of experiences do I want to have? What type of impact do I want to make on the world? If I make all this money, that's great, but how am I going to make it actually matter? Because I can't take any of it with me whenever I die. So I feel like as I've made the transition from the hobby level to the professional level, sometime in between, like a year of working in real estate, the motivation and the charge behind what I'm doing had to significantly change.
Gotcha. Okay. So then I guess that leads into, what advice would you give someone who hasn't done their first deal yet or is
Mhm.
just looking to get started into wholesaling?
So my advice would be, trying to think if there's a way for me to put this into one phrase. Because I got my first deal. This is why I'm like trying to put it together. I'll give you like the logic behind it. I say, and this is typically what you hear on like YouTube too. It's like, oh, like I got my first deal and the rest is history. Look at me, like I'm so great. Like, truth be told, I set the goal to make six figures, these first 2 years, and I haven't done it yet. I straight up haven't. I've been able to live and survive and like make it work, but it's been a struggle and it's not all glitz and glam for everybody. There's people out there I know that like have made six figures on their first or second year in wholesaling, and that's great. But for me, that wasn't the journey that I went down. And then additionally, it's like, oh, I did my first deal. I'm sure that he was just crushing it, like doing like multiple deals a month, right after that. No, I just started doing like and having multiple deals in escrow now. And it took me an entire other year, one whole year after I got my first deal to get my second deal. So there's a lot of things that people won't tell you whenever you're starting out. And this is a story that doesn't make it on YouTube and it's not going to go viral because it's not sexy. And it's like, I'm still grinding through this and I'm still setting the goal just to make $100,000 this year. And I'm still freaking tumbling down a hill trying to make this thing happen. So if I was getting started and if I could like time travel back to, let's just say like Logan, a couple weeks after he got this $28,000 check. And if I could give him one message, it would be drop your ego and join a team. Because exactly what happened after I got my first deal in 4 months, it was this Goldilocks deal. I sold it to literally the neighbor across the street for $30,000. No issues. Neighbors didn't talk to each other and find out and start going behind my back and say that this is sketchy and illegal. No title issues, even though this is like an old property that had been handed down a whole bunch of times. No liens, no nothing. Like, I mean, it was abandoned. Like, there was no liens on it that needed to be paid off. None of them. So it was a Goldilocks deal. And in a way, that was a great blessing because I was like, oh my gosh, I got all this money. But at the same time, it was a curse because now that set my expectations as every single real estate deal is going to be easy. And this was the second contract I had gotten. The first contract didn't go through because of title issues, and I knew that they were out there. I was like, oh, so you just got to find the ones that are quick and easy to do. And there are ones like that, but it's not going to be every deal. So I ended up dropping out of college, right? I have 28 grand. I'm thinking, okay, I'm set. You know, I'll be able to pay for my expenses, whatever. And so I'm going through, I'm trying to do it myself. I'm like buying this dialer, buying this CRM, not knowing what I'm doing, buying this list, like kind of calling like 10 people here, calling 10 people there, like trying to just like piece it together and do it myself because that's all that I knew since I was 12 was just make it work for yourself. And so I kept doing that. I ended up wasting all of my money. I ended up putting myself into credit card debt as I was trying to move up here. And so eventually I got to the point where it's like I lost all $28,000 and I didn't lose it. I basically invested it into myself by making all of these mistakes. But if I wanted to avoid making those mistakes and I wanted to make money faster, I would say drop your ego and go get a job because that was the thing that was holding me back. I was saying, you know, like I'm 19 years old and I've only worked for one person in my life. I wonder if it'd be cool. Like if I could be 50, it'd be like, yeah, you know, I worked for myself my whole life and I've always run a company and I've, you know, only worked for one person and I hated it. And come to realize now I end up joining a job because I have to, and I need to be able to make this money. And I learn way more in 6 months at an okay wholesale shop than I did that entire year trying to do it myself. I'm seeing now what an actual business looks like instead of what a side hustle looks like. Wholesaling itself is just a side hustle. If you want it to actually create financial freedom within your life, you need to stop treating it like a side hustle and turn it into a business. And what I saw as I was plugged into somebody else's business is that they don't just have, you know, this random conversation with a seller and they just wing it on the phone. There are steps to a sales process that they go through that's psychologically supposed to help the seller make a decision on if they're going to sell their house or not. Then there's also the whole process for dispo. And then there's also this whole compensation for, you know, pay, and then culture of the company has something else to do with it. And then you've got to have systems and processes. And then how do you keep track of everything? And how does this get split and that get split? And you get an inside view of a successful business whenever you're working there. And now the COO of that business that I was working with was the person that I ran this 18-mile race with. And so without that, I wouldn't have been here. I feel like the whole 18-mile race gave me this whole new look on like personal development as it applies to entrepreneurship. And I've made so much progress just being inside of that, that ecosphere, not to mention the confidence that it gives you because you don't have to go through and market for these leads. I was calling PPC leads where somebody's like filling out a form and it's an ad on Google, but that lead cost $1,000. I didn't even know those existed, but they're the most motivated leads I'd ever talked to. And so I'm over here closing deals and I'm just on the phone, you know, doing what I do best. I don't have to worry about dispoing the properties. I don't have to worry about systems. I don't have to worry about marketing. I don't have to worry about, you know, selling the deal, anything like that. I just keep my head down and work on sales. And relating it back to business, sales is a fundamental skill that once you learn it, you know, you're always going to be able to be employable. So anyways, I did that. And then now, okay, I did 20 plus deals with that company. One of those deals was a $120,000 novation deal. That was crazy. I would have never been able to say I'd done a $120,000 deal if I was still trying to bang my head against the wall doing it myself. So if I was a newbie, to bring this all back to your point, because I know I've been long-winded with this. If I was a newbie that was looking at, what do I do to get my first deal? I would make the decision, are you looking for a hobby or are you looking for a business? If you're looking for a hobby, go do it yourself. Go cold call the sellers, pull the list, make the relationships with some local buyers, have it be very small, and it's just something you do whenever you got some free time. That's cool. Nothing wrong with that. If your goal is to make it a business, you need to drop your ego and you need to join a team and realize that the biggest compensation you get out of joining a team is the fact that you get an inside look at a producing and performing business. Or sometimes you get an inside look at a producing and non-producing and non-performing business, and you learn what not to do. Either way, though, you get paid more so in the experience if you want to make this an actual business more than you'll actually make on the checks, because you're getting a portion of every deal. You're not making 100% of every deal. So yeah, if I was a newbie, that's where I would start, is either figure out, is this a hobby thing right now? And it can always change down the line. If it's a hobby thing right now, great. Do it as a hobby. Eventually, if you want to do it as a business, great. Join a team. That's my advice.
Awesome. That's fantastic information. It's a great story. It's I always love chatting with you, Logan. But I do have a few questions before we end up wrapping this thing up and letting you get back to crushing it on the phones. So first off, what made you want to be on the podcast today?
You, bro, you're just a great person. So I was like, if Corey's doing a podcast, I got to be on it. No way I'm going to miss my shot at being one of the first members.
Oh, I appreciate it, man. Awesome. So outside of the team, why aren't we doing business together?
We aren't sending business opportunities to each other, I guess. I don't know. That's a good question.
So that's something we got to work on then.
Yeah, definitely.
So what would you, within business, what would you say are your strengths?
Strengths? So I've gone through and I actually did the Clifton Strengths test with Rosie. And my top 5 strengths are ideation, so like coming up with ideas, futuristic, so like future-faced thinking, competition, achiever, and then activator. So that's like activating other people. So those are my top 5 strengths, and I'm just now trying to, utilize those more in my life. So strengths are like visionary. I can get really creative ideas. I can help, inspire other people to take action. I'm always about competition and achieving big things. And I think that's just part of what drives me. And I think I can lead a team and help them achieve big things as well.
Awesome. Well, then what are your weaknesses?
Weaknesses is, I would say, biggest thing is I'm a great starter. I can come up with a brilliant idea, but I am a terrible finisher. And that is something that I definitely got to see the hard part about whenever I was dropping out of college. And it took me a year of just banging my head against the wall and like having all these other deals that I thought were going to work, like having those fall out, to realize that like, okay, like I'm great at coming up like big picture, where do I want to be 10 years from now, but I have trouble executing on the day-to-day. Yeah, that's definitely my biggest weakness. And then I would say my second biggest weakness is a lack of experience right now. It's just like starting out, I didn't have any overthinking because I just didn't know what I didn't know. And I feel like now, as I transition from my hobby level to business level, I'm going to run into the same thing. I just don't know what I don't know. So 2 biggest weaknesses, I would say, are those.
Yeah, no, I definitely get that. I would say I was pretty much the same with the terrible finisher. Just I love to start things, but we're working on that. Luckily, we both use a program that helps fix that. So Um,
75 hard. That's why I did it. I needed the discipline. I lacked that so much. Oh my gosh.
yep. Yep. No, I get, and I've actually, so I don't know if you saw the post I had made that I ended up quitting phase 1 for the meantime because I
Oh,
realized
really?
my intention wasn't there.
Mm,
All the stuff I was doing it because I knew how to do it and it was easy. And
yeah.
that's not the point.
Yeah.
So now I'm actually taking
What I
time
got
to
with
really
phase two.
figure out what I'm gonna do, which I'm almost there. I'm just trying to work out my diet now. So,
Mm,
um,
that's
and
good.
then I'll be back on it, man.
I love it.
All right. Well, Logan, what do you need help with that will make you money in the next 30 days?
I need help with people bringing us more opportunities. If you've got a sub 2 deal to sell, bring it to us. We've got buyers outside of sub 2. If you've got a cash deal to sell, we've got hedge funds that buy all over the US. If you've got anything that you need to sell, JV with us. If you've got a deal that you need closed, call me. I'll close the deal for you. Those are the things that will make us money. It keeps the wheels turning. Bring us deals. Bring us opportunities.
Yeah, there you go. Well, you heard him. I don't even have to reiterate it. He said it. If you got those, it's up. Awesome. Well, then I see you've got your Instagram on there. Is there anywhere
Mhm.
else that you want people to reach out to you?
Instagram, I would say, is best. Shoot me a DM. Say what's up. Say you saw me on here. I love to say hi, and always looking to make new connections. So don't be afraid. I don't buy it. I promise.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Logan, that's pretty much all I got. Is there anything else you wanna chat about or words of wisdom you want to give out?
Um, let's see. A good open-ended question to leave it off with. I would say really just realize the biggest thing that I've learned over these past couple of years is that personal development and entrepreneurship are not two mutually exclusive things. They are a Venn diagram, and like the Venn diagram isn't like this, it's really like this. Like it's just the same expression of itself because you're only going to become as successful as the person that you can become because you have to embody that identity if you're ever going to maintain that level of success. So, if you're getting started in entrepreneurship, you're wondering if entrepreneurship is for you. It is a tough journey, but the journey is supposed to be tough and it's rewarding because it is tough. And the person that you become along that journey is due to the trials and tribulations that you get put through. It's the same thing for me in my race. I learned the majority of this stuff by getting injured and doing 75 hard and phase 1 and all this other stuff in preparation for the actual race. The race was great. It was fun. It was challenging. Don't get me wrong, but I got and I became the new person that I needed to become through the training for the 8 months. So if you are getting started in entrepreneurship or wondering if entrepreneurship is the right choice for you, you've got to ask yourself if you're serious about becoming a different person and truly developing who you are, confronting your demons and becoming the person that you're meant to be and leaving the old version of you behind. Yeah, that's my nugget that I'll leave everybody with.
Yeah. No, I have to agree. Personally, I think everyone has the capability to become an entrepreneur. Um, it's just a matter of how bad you want it. Are you
Yeah.
willing to do the work and get at it? Now,
Mm-hmm.
does that mean that if you start trying right now and you're, say, 50 years old, you're going to be like, uh, you know, Elon Musk? I don't know.
Yeah.
How bad do you want it? You know?
I bet Elon's a freaking
So,
super genius and works 100 hours a week and can live off of sunlight. So
yeah. But yeah, no, that's awesome. I really appreciate you coming on, hanging out with me, and chit chatting. Um, but
I appreciate it,
I
man.
think we'll close this up so that people don't get tired of listening to me. I'm sure they're not tired of listening to you, but
Whatever.
awesome, man. Well, again, I appreciate it and thank you for coming on. send you back and close this thing up.
Okay. Appreciate it, Corey.
All right. Well, guys, that's our show. I hope you enjoyed talking to or listening to Logan. You didn't talk to him. You could talk to him, though, if you reach out on Instagram. But I enjoyed talking to him. Always love hearing what he has to say. I did have to cut it short because if we really get into it, this could end up being like a 3-4 hour podcast. And I doubt you're going to stick around that long. Just be completely honest. So, that being said, like and subscribe. Come back next week. Check out the new special guest. Whoever that is, we'll figure it out. And yeah, leave a comment. Anything you want to see more of, anything you don't want to see more of, any dances, concerns, whatever, put it down there. I might look at it. I probably won't listen to it if it's ridiculous, but I'll check it out. That being said, until next time, have a wonderful day.